Good morning, dear comrades. Today we will find out whether cardboard is needed in front of the radiator and whether there is any benefit from it in the winter. Supporters of a cardboard say that it helps the engine to warm up faster and it helps to keep the operating temperature better. Opponents say that the thermostat solves the task, so it's quite okay without any cardboard. We will just measure it with and without a cardboard and see if there is a difference. First, a little bit of history. Many old-timer cars have shutters in front of the radiator just from the factory. When this topic arises, people usually recall mid-20th century cars. Opponents of a cardboard argue that the shutter was justified on such cars since the fan was connected directly to the crankshaft through a belt, and therefore it was blowing at the engine all the time. But there is a nuance. For example, some Gas-24 Volga cars also came with an electric fan from the factory, but they still had shutters. The second nuance is that nowadays a decent number of cars are still being produced with a fan on the visco drive. That means that the fan rotates at least a little, even on a completely cold engine, preventing it from warming up faster. And since we touched on this topic, let me mention such a beautiful solution which I like most. It's on the Russian ZIS-110. Its chrome radiator lining is the shutter. Here in this photo it's closed, and in this it's open. The most interesting thing is that this shutter is automatically controlled. On the top tank of the radiator, there is a thermostat which commands to open and close the shutter depending on the temperature of the radiator in this case. Nice idea, isn't it? Moreover, even in some modern models, there are certain mechanisms that limit the amount of air supplied through the radiator. Now let's turn to the measurements. And the first question that will have to be solved is how to close the radiator. The cardboard itself is a classic solution. We consider it a Russian know-how, but I doubt it was invented by Russian guys. Well, in addition to it, there are some ready-made, let's call it gadgets, that you can buy for a specific car model and close the grille with it. Such gadgets differ in aesthetic appeal, trying to please different customer clusters. If you search through Google or whatever, I think that you find different ones for a particular car. I proceeded easier. I bought a box of my favorite drink. Then I shook the drink out and used the box, well, the very cardboard for the experiment. We are starting the experiment. Our subject is still the same Toyota Prado with a diesel engine of 2.8. I almost forgot. I must say a few words about what the cardboard is useless for. It doesn't affect the cooling rate on the engine. If you have severe frost and this problem is urgent, you need to wrap the whole engine from all sides. A cardboard covers only one hole, and there are still a lot of them in the engine compartment. And the same, by the way, applies to the auto blanket. By itself, it has practically no effect on the cooling rate of the engine. Hope you haven't swallowed your chewing gum knowing it. And now let's conduct an experiment. We warm the engine with a preheater, without starting it, for 20 minutes. Exactly 20 minutes we spotted. Further, now 20 minutes have passed, we start the engine. And now we carefully monitor the readings of the thermometers and write them down in a booklet. Now we've got the results, let's install the cardboard. Oops! The radiator is a little bigger than the cardboard. I told you, it's all the operator's fault, because we needed to take 2 cartons of drink. Well, we have 2 boxes now, I mean 2 cartons, so we'll try to install them. We need to slightly disassemble the car, and Toyota allows to do it easily. Literally with your bare hands. We are installing the cardboard. Now an important thing, pay attention, come closer. The cooling radiator is the rear one. In front of it is the radiator of the air conditioner, or the condenser, or capacitor. So you need to place a cardboard in front of it. You can't put it in front of the radiator itself, in front of the cooling radiator, I mean, because it completely blocks the airflow through it. And this is already fraught with overheating. If you place it properly, there will be some space. The air will go and the fan will cool the radiator if necessary. Some even place it on the car's snout. It's even better, but it's less elegant and may be used for frightening people. Now let's install the cardboard. I hooked a wire here, so that later it would be easier to get it out. Now it's placed and fixed, so it's not going anywhere from here. By the way, some worry that the cardboard will turn into porridge from the flying water and mud. It won't turn. I checked it many times. I will show it when the spring comes. So here we fix this loop. It really depends on the car how to do it. And now we assemble everything back. The car is ready at last. Now we need to repeat the experiment, this time with the cardboard. So we need to cool down the engine. It was a joke, of course. In fact, the engine was left to cool down during the whole day. Why exactly the day, you know from the previous video about the cooling rate of the engine. And if you have not watched it, the link is still in the description down below. A day later, the boiler was launched again for 20 minutes. Exactly 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, the engine was started and the readings of the thermometers were recorded carefully in a booklet. And now let's compare these very recordings of these same devices from the first and second measurements and see if there is a difference between them. At the very beginning, a little unpleasant surprise happened. In two measurements, the boiler warmed up the engine to significantly different temperatures. With the cardboard, the engine turned out to be a little warmer. But I strongly doubt that this is a matter of the cardboard. Rather, for some reason, the boiler started at different times. Therefore, in order to be somehow more or less honest, we will shift the schedules to equalize the start temperature. And we see that the cardboard affects the heating rate. This, frankly, is an amazing result for me. I thought the difference would not be so noticeable. Well, sometimes technologies need a slight fall-quick dressing. And for clarity, let's combine the launch time. And here you can clearly see that, well, of course it is not entirely honest because the start temperature was different. And we're not interested in temperature itself, but in difference in dynamics. So here you can see that with the cardboard, the graph takes steeper up. The engine heats faster. The difference seems not to be very big, but it appears. It can't be ignored like a couple of extra cents in a bill. Now let's pass to running trials. At their beginning, the engine, transmission and cabin are fully warmed up. This is an essential condition. Other extra heaters and helpers are turned off. We are driving twice along one route, on which there is a highway with no traffic lights, city streets with a few traffic lights, and there are some light traffic jams. Well, it's quite a typical city set. The normal temperature for my engine is 83 to 86 degrees Celsius or about 185 Fahrenheit. At least, it goes within these limits in the summer. Starting with highway, we perform steady running slightly uphill with a small, well, city speed. The difference is only 1 degree Celsius or 1.8 Fahrenheit. In more severe frosts, the difference of course will increase, but it's unlikely to become terrifying. Under load, the engine generates a large amount of heat, and it's usually enough to maintain the operating temperature. And do not forget that the stove doesn't work hard, because the cabin is already warm, everything is warmed up. Now we are going exactly along the same section of the road in the opposite direction, and here the difference is slightly bigger. Because we went there a little bit uphill and back we go a little bit downhill. And here the difference is 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, because the engine burden has decreased. The next part of the running, let's say, experiment is the movement from a traffic light to a traffic light. You can see the speed there. It can be seen if we stopped or drove off and moving at low speed everywhere. It is shown in kilometers per hour. The difference is small. 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 Fahrenheit is nothing. But there is such a nuance. This difference increases over time. The engine, especially diesel, cools down. The gasoline engine also cools if it's not completely warmed up, and the stove takes a lot of heat. You just don't notice it on the arrow. It always stands upright where the temperature is at least similar to something. Traffic jam. Here, even the notorious skeptics will see the difference. It can be seen that the engine cools down without the cardboard and cools by a noticeable amount, despite the fact that the temperature overboard was only -6 Celsius or 21 Fahrenheit. The engine burden is near zero. There is a little heat generated. The stove also takes it somewhat, and the temperature drops. To install the cardboard or not, of course, it's up to you. This is your car. I'll just add a couple of points to make it easier for you to make a decision. Firstly, at lower temperatures, the difference will increase. Maybe I'll make another video when the frost is harder. Let's see. I haven't decided yet. The experiments were carried out on a fully warmed-up car, and that also reduced the difference with or without a cardboard. In real life, when the cabin is not completely warmed up, the stove removes quite a lot of heat, and therefore the amount of heat dissipated by the engine matters more than when everything is warmed up. It is believed that petroleum engines are warming up quite fast, which in general is true. But the speed of heating up a gasoline motor with a cardboard also increases. And in severe frost at idle, the stove can take away so much heat from the gasoline engine that it will be underheated. And accordingly, it will consume more fuel. In general, there is nothing good in riding a cold engine, even though it's gasoline, even though it's diesel. As for the risk of overheating, you can theorize for a long time. I'll just say that I remove the cardboard in spring, usually when the air temperature is already about +10 Celsius or 50 Fahrenheit. I'm too lazy to do it earlier. Everything is fine. The engine temperature is normal as expected. And by the way, the cardboard also protects radiators from evil winter road reagents, which Russia is famous for. In the beginning, I promised to tell you about a paradoxical, let's say, effect. The fact is that in winter, the engine without the cardboard can be overheated. The essence of the phenomenon is that antifreeze, unlike water, doesn't turn into solid ice when frozen, it just becomes thicker. And it's difficult to pump thick antifreeze through thin tubes. Therefore, in the winter on the highway, when there is a large flow of incoming cold air, the pump at some point may simply stop pumping antifreeze through the radiator, and the engine may get overheated like Father Frost on the New Year party. Therefore, in severe frost, the cardboard is simply mandatory on the highway to avoid this kind of trouble. Subscribe, so as not to get overheated in winter. Good night.